Goodness, I am so honored that you all took some time to come join me here to talk about confidence in learning. So let me introduce myself. So first of all, hello, I'm Katherine McEldoon. I am a cognitive and learning scientist or cognitive psychologist here at Pearson on the Efficacy and Learning team. I am a research scientist that really focuses on how people learn best. How does that work in your mind and brain? What are the learning processes that really work across the board? And then what actually moves the needle for learning outcomes? So I sit on the efficacy and learning team here at Pearson, and our job is to make sure that the best of the science of learning makes its way into our learning experiences and products for our learners. So I'm here to share with you a little bit today about learning happens best when. What are some insights from psychology and from cognitive science that are really useful to understand as an instructor, like what's going on under the hood? So you can, if you have that understanding, then you can tune your teaching just a little bit based on that. So I will be sharing, it will be a little bit more psychology research focused. I will leave it to you to then think about how to turn this into teaching for yourself. I'll give you a few hints, but that's where you're the expert, not me. First of all, I am zooming in from the Southeastern United States. I know that you've had many other accents on this webinar series, so I hope you can understand my American accent. I hope it works out for you. So thank you so much for joining again. So let me start out by sharing a little bit about what we take to heart very seriously here at Pearson. Our mission is to create vibrant and enriching learning experiences that are designed for real world impact. This is really the experience we strive to create for our learners. And so when we zoom in on that and think about what we mean by vibrant and enriching, we really need to take a learner's thoughts and feelings into account. So when we say vibrant, we want it to be energizing, exciting, people to feel really positively about their learning. When we say enriching, we want it to be worthwhile, adding value, building their knowledge, building their skills. So, people kind of get what they came for. And when we get these things right, this results in a really effective, rewarding, and confidence building experience. So what do we mean when we say confidence? We all understand kind of what that means just as a human in the world. But when we think about the psychology research underneath confidence, we kind of mean something kind of specific. So a confident person knows what and how to do things. They believe they can perform those tasks, and they keep positive expectations. They're optimistic, and they feel like they can bounce back if failure occurs. They're very resilient. So generally, confidence is used to describe how competent you feel. It's the self-belief that you can do it and you can accomplish the tasks that you set out to do. In psychology, we refer to this as self-efficacy. You may have heard of that. But really, all of these things put together, it's a self-belief is really, really important for learning, and this belief that you will succeed. So why does confidence matter? There's a lot of reasons. Like I said, I'm trained as a cognitive academic, cognitive psychologist, so you'll see my research citations down at the bottom. If you're curious about any of these, you can copy and paste them and put them into Google Scholar and read some really fun research articles. But I've summarized it for you in case that isn't your idea of fun. So in regards to confidence, a belief that you can succeed is very important for learning. The self-belief predicts motivation. It's linked to using effective study skills. It leads to then better learning outcomes, right? Learners who are confident participate more, they work harder, they persist longer, they respond less negatively to setbacks. And for example, several research studies have shown that people who believe they can succeed in math choose to take more math courses. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure this is true for English language learning too. Now, one way we can measure confidence is to ask learners, hey, you just solved a problem. You just worked out something, some learning activity. How confident are you that you got that right? That's one way we can measure it. And when we look at confidence this way, confidence is a very, very strong predictor of actual performance. And so the more confident learners are also more successful. So we can say, this is a little researchy, but we can say that confidence accounts for 47% of the variance on a math achievement test. So how confident they were was a predicted 47% of their performance on that math test. So quantitatively, we can see that being confident is really, really linked to achievement. All right, people are still joining. Thank you so much for joining. All right, so we're here to think about how can we build confidence, and we break down what builds confidence in learning. It helps to really zoom in on the core part of the learning process. So this is a model that I'm going to use as we go through this talk here. So you can think about there's a learning event. You solve a problem. You have a really good conversation. You pass an exam. You're doing a learning thing. You're thinking about it and you're doing a learning thing. Then you kind of see if you got it right or not, right? Like, yes, I did well on the test, or, oh, yikes, that didn't go quite right. You either then succeed or you fail. Then you feel something about it, right? You're like, yes, I did it. I feel so excited. Or, oh gosh, that wasn't great. You have a feeling, you have an emotion, and that really influences, what your next steps are, your next learning steps. So how you feel impacts how much effort you put in and the choices you make to practice and study. So if we help people feel good about their learning and give them good experiences of effort resulting in success, they'll put in the work and develop the mindsets needed to achieve their goals. All of this will help them become a confident learner. Great. So we want our learners to be confident, but confidence can be a bit of a double-edged sword, right? We don't always want people to be super confident all the time, because we all know people who are very, very confident who maybe shouldn't be, right? And so we really want to make sure there's not too much confidence and not too little, right? Because if you have too little, you're timid, you're unmotivated, you kind of want to hang back, and that's not good. You need to kind of put yourself out there, right? But if you have too much confidence, you feel like you know it all already. I don't need to study, even though you don't really know it all, right? So we do want learners to be confident, but it helps if that confidence is accurate, right? Especially if we don't want them to be overconfident. And then this will help them feel good about their learning and feel good about what they've accomplished and their ability to accomplish things. All right. Oh, more people coming. Thank you for still joining. I really appreciate it. Okay. So how do learning experiences create confidence? So these building blocks of how you feel, what you think, and what you do, these are the building blocks of confidence for learners. But these are also the building blocks for good learning experiences across the board. So we didn't just make this up. Like I said, I am a cognitive psychologist, and we take the science of learning very seriously here. And it's our job to ensure that our learning experiences are grounded in the best expertise of how learning works. So everything I'm going to share with you today is hopefully accessible and easy to understand, but please know that we've distilled this from vast amounts of rigorous scientific scholarship. So we did the hard work for you, but we've summarized a lot of this into this idea of, like, when does learning happen best? So these are things that you keep in mind, I'm sure, as an instructor for your students, but what does that optimal learning experience really look like? So we at Pearson, just like you, keep these things in mind, and we want our learners to think and feel this way. So first and foremost, we want learning to be a welcoming experience. We want people to like feel positive, energized, like it's something that they want to do and they'll succeed. It's really important. It's built for how the mind learns. There's just some things about how the human mind is with memory, attention, practice that are just kind of the nuts and bolts that are really useful to keep in mind when you're building a learning experience. And also we want to support good learning behavior, right? We want our learners to learn, use good study techniques. And so they can learn on their own, but we can support them in building those skills too. Also, we want to make sure that we have kind of the good nuts and bolts underneath in terms of purposeful outcomes-focused design. For English, that means things are aligned to really good learning objectives, aligned to good assessment. And here we do that by keeping our global scale of English in mind and having that underneath all of our English language learning experiences. So let's get started with building for how the mind learns. So this is really focused on the thinking and learning processes that are kind of just the core of learning, right? So learning happens best when minds are supported and challenged. Learners build on existing knowledge. They learn through guided practice, is really important, and build well-organized mental models. You actively make meaning and flexible connections in increasingly authentic settings, and you build meaningful, connected, and at the ready usable knowledge, right? So what does this have to do with confidence? Part of the definition of confidence is a belief that you can be successful and reach your goal. This is so core to the learning process. So you can believe it, but this belief should also be based on past experiences being successful. I have confidence in myself because I've done it before, right? And I know I succeeded, right? Just kind of building that bank of experiences with success really fills the tank for confidence here. So once you can look over your shoulder, be like, I know I can do it because I've done it before. And then we also want to build confidence in knowing that you know for sure, right? Like, I know I got this, but I actually know that I have those skills. It's not that false confidence. It's that true, accurate confidence too. So as much as possible, we want to give students experience with succeeding and reaping the rewards of their effort and hard work. So how do we do this? I mean, it's pretty simple. It all comes down to practice, practice, practice. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit about what this is. So there's a type of practice where you're just kind of going through the motions, but what I'm going to talk with you about today is a very specific type of practice called deliberate practice. This is characterized by a high degree of focused effort to develop specific skills and concepts beyond one's current ability levels. This isn't the easy, comfortable practice. This is the like, you're really working practice, okay? And there's a couple features of that are helpful for you to have in mind when you're thinking about building really effective practice experience for your learners. So this really involves focusing on pushing yourself beyond your current skill level rather than just executing what you can already do pretty comfortably. We want this to be working towards a reasonable yet challenging goal, right? So how do we do this? We want our learners to practice with structured activities designed for improvement of particular skills. I want this to be challenging and reasonable, this appropriate level of challenge. It's effortful, so it's going to be work. It's not always going to be easy or fun. Sorry. It might be fun, but it won't be easy. We want to make sure we give lots of feedback to our learners so they know if what they're doing is going in the right direction. And we want to provide ample opportunities for repetition and continuous gradual improvement. All right. So what is this and what is it not, right? So just repeated performance of things you're already good at, like kind of flashcards of things you already know, or like listening to a story or a conversation, be like, yeah, I know, that feels good, to kind of practice things to confirm, yeah, I got it. But that's not really where you're gonna, really do the learning that you need. So drill and kill does have a place in learning, but this is about a little bit more than that. This is real learning that happens at the edge of your abilities, where you're really pushing yourself. So effortful practice is like specific skills with drills, really focusing on like specific moves and training that out. So this might be for English, drilling words that you have a hard time remembering. It might be doing the uncomfortable work of practicing a conversation with phrases that you don't know well. This work, it's like I said, it's not fun. It's really pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, but so you can really push further on that. So why does this matter? This matters because if you don't push yourself, your practice will kind of peter out and you'll plateau really quickly. So here's a bit of a research study we're going to show where if you just kind of do it on your own on autopilot a little bit, you'll get better, but you'll kind of just plateau. And so deliberate practice is necessary to push beyond that plateau. So here you can see when people started deliberate practice and they went into like full-time training and how their abilities went up and up. All right. Okay, so we're going to get a little sciencey with you now. I'm sharing some results from a research study. You may have heard of the 10,000 hour rule. So from Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, it's just kind of in the ether these days. But this is the original research study, the OG research study from 1993 that came from. So this was where some researchers studied violinists at music conservatory. And they asked people to track how many hours a day they practiced. And then they went back and say who went on to become a professional, who were the best students, who were good students, and then people who went out, decided they wanted to be music teachers, which is fine. We all need teachers, that's fine. But they asked, okay, how much did you study? How much did you practice? And then how did that go? And then across this and several other studies on people developing top levels of performance, time and effort equals performance. So not only did the best violinists put in more hours per day of this really focused practice, over their lifetimes, they accumulated more. That's where the 10,000 hours comes from. And this practice wasn't easy. This other graph here shows that their morning practice sessions were so intense that a lot of times they needed a nap in the afternoon. So it's not always like fun. You got to put in the work, but it pays off. Another part of deliberate practice is feedback is essential. You know this as a teacher, but it's a really effective learning mechanism. So a recent meta-analysis by Vinisky et al. Just in 2020 showed, looked over 430 research studies. So a study of studies that accumulated over 60,000 learners showed that feedback had a medium effect size on learning experience. So to translate that, that means if you give people feedback, that's like someone going from getting 50% correct to 67% correct, or 85% correct to 92% correct. So it's really, really helpful to, we all kind of know feedback matters, but this shows that feedback really matters, right? When they looked into the characteristics of feedback that made it really useful, it was that it had to communicate to learn where learners were relative to their goals, right? So if you have like a performance benchmark or some like level, like a B2 level that you want them to get to, tell them where they are relative to that, relative to the goals. 2, provide information on what they need to do to improve. How can I get better? How can I close that gap? And then also give them feedback soon enough that they can use it in their revision cycle, right? Feedback's great, but if they can't use it to then revise their practice, what are we even doing here? Okay, next, the correct level of challenge. It's got to be just beyond, again, this is intuitive stuff. I'm telling you guys the psychology research underneath it, right? So there's what you can do on your own. There's what's like just way too far out. I cannot do that. I'm not there yet. And then there's what I can do with a little bit of help from a teacher, help with some instructional scaffolds, things that can, I can get there if I've got someone holding my hand. This is the sweet spot that we really want to aim for when that right level of challenge. And so figuring out what that sweet spot is for the learner has consistently been shown as one of the most effective ways to push learning forward. So we will want to zoom in for that. This is where things like the Global Scale of English can help do that. If you are going to be coming to tomorrow's webinar, Mike Mayer is going to be talking about this a little in more detail about how you can use the Global Scale of English to help identify what this level is for your learners. Moving forward, but you might just want to know, well, what generally is that? Can you help? So many research studies have kind of pulled together and shown that that sweet spot of learning is when we succeed about 85% of the time. So you need a good mix of success and failures to figure out what works and what doesn't. So if you're always right, you're not going to know what to improve. And if you're always wrong, you're not going to know what works. So in a study in fourth grade mathematics learners, 82% of students' answers were correct in the classroom of the most successful teachers. So most successful teachers kind of can hit this sweet spot really nicely. This also has other advantages. So another advantage of really hitting this appropriate level of challenge is that it helps students remain motivated and sustain their efforts, right? If you if it's too much, if it's too hard, you're going to be like, I don't want to do this. You're going to step away, right? And if it's too easy, boring, right? Another thing is having this right level of challenge is a key predictor of flow state, which is really interesting. It's like when you're in the zone, you kind of just lose yourself in the work, kind of time disappears. And I think it's really fascinating that this is a key predictor of flow state. We'll talk about both of those more soon. Okay. All right, to wrap up this section a little bit, deliberate practice. You know this as an English teacher, sometimes you just got to get those things under your belt, but once you do, then you can go on to the more challenging work. But when we're having our students practice, let's make the most of it, right? So how can we do this? Make sure it's a structured activity by defining explicit goals in your course material. That way they know what your expectations are and can tune their practice. Can-do statements, like this is what you can do at the end of this, are really helpful to guide that. Consider using a rubric or specific performance criteria. That really helps with their learners. When finding that appropriate level of challenge, pre-test, right? Use a pre-test to find your learner's ability level. You can do a performance assessment or prior knowledge assessment. Sorry, I just saw a comment from Sarah on 85% too easy or too hard. There's a really fascinating example on the internet. Gosh, I should have that up. I can where you can see like what reading English is like at an 85% correct level, and it's more. I agree with you. It seems like 85% would be too easy, but if you get an example of it, kind of, if you can experience it, it's not. It's still pretty challenging. So see if you can find that, but that's a great comment to bring up. Okay, challenging yet reasonable. Prior knowledge pre-tests. All right. it will be effortful. So set expectations about that, set expectations about frequency of practice, that it should be hard. And then, provide that feedback and provide ample opportunities for practice. So lots of short assignments along the way, scaffold that for them. Great. Okay. What time is it? 28. Okay, great. So we got that wrapped up. Now we want to make sure, now we got the mind in mind, we got the good thinking and learning. We want to make sure people feel good about it too. So we want to make sure that learning is this welcoming experience where learners feel engaged, positive, that it's maybe even a little fun, even if it's hard. Learners believe that they can see that they're confident, right? And motivated to achieve their goals. And they just feel positive, confident, and encouraged. I mean, it feels good to feel good, but this also really affects learning too. Emotions shape your mindset and your dispositions or attitudes towards learning. It influences motivation, what study and learning strategies you use, and ultimately what you learn, right? And these positive emotions support learning by increasing engagement, and this leads to greater performance. So from a small child trying to learn how to count to an older adult, like trying to teach your parents how to use the new app on their phone, emotions, positive and negative emotions, such as anxiety or satisfaction, can help or hinder learning. And it's useful to think about how that might work. All right, kind of going back to our core learning feedback loop here. Confidence is a feeling, right? It can be a general feeling you have about yourself, just kind of like, I'm a confident person in general. So you don't really have any direct experience with learning a particular thing. You just are a confident person. Or confidence can be based on a specific experience or a specific thing. Like, I'm really confident in languages, but art, that's not my thing, right? So this repeated success builds confidence. So when we think about it this way, we can define confidence as positive feelings based on your self-belief that you will be successful, based on your prior experiences over a time, and your ability to learn and adjust. So it's tied to your actual performance and actual experience. So here, when you do a thing, you succeed or fail, you then have an experience, a perception of success or failure. You then have an emotion. You have a feeling about it, right? Like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible about myself. I can never do this. Or, I probably should have studied harder, and I'm a little ashamed right now, but I'll do better next time. That then feeds into your motivation and then performance. So we'll step through this just a little bit more. All right, so like I said, something happens with learning, you have a perception of it, and you kind of have a little moment in your mind where your mind tries to make sense of it. You say, oh my gosh, what's the cause? Why did that happen? Human minds are amazing at trying to figure out why things happen. So lots of researchers have thought about this. And when it comes to academic emotions and experiences of failure, people typically have 4 reasons why this might happen. It could be a cause that's something about them. Ability, I'm just not good enough. Or it could, which is something that some people believe you can't really change that. Or you could say, I didn't put in enough effort. What's good about that is you can change how much effort you put in, right? You could also say something that isn't about you, like, oh, the test was just too hard. Or, oh, I just had an unlucky day. Or I had a really lucky day, right? So what's important is this perceived cause is way more significant than the actual cause, right? Like what you think was the reason, way more important than the actual reason was. And this is important because how you feel about it can establish a pattern for future behavior that can be really self-defeating, right? If you're like, oh, I didn't do good, I'm just terrible, and I'm never going to get it. You're not going to put in the effort next time. That's bad. We don't want people thinking or feeling that way, right? Right. Okay, let's move on. So again, another little sciencey slide here. We'll keep it quick, but when you have a negative emotion, that's not always necessarily a bad thing, right? When you fail, you'll feel bad, but sometimes that can actually be good for learning. So if you believe your setback was due to something that you can control, you might feel a little ashamed or angry or like a little bit of anxiety. But as long as you don't feel things too much, as long as it doesn't totally overtake you, and that's what this Yerkes-Dodson law is, it's a relationship between stress and performance. As long as you don't feel these too strongly, these negative, what we call activating emotions, kind of marshal energy. And you're like, oh, I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to do what it takes to not feel this way again next time. And that can actually spur motivation on and energy towards something you do better next time. But if you believe your setback is due to something you can't control, you have one of these deactivating negative emotions. You feel hopeless, you feel sad, you feel disappointed, and you might just shut down and not try again. So this then leads to the growth mindset work that many of you may already be familiar with. But mindset refers to a learner's implicit theories about how much they can control what's going on with their learning. So if you are someone with a fixed mindset, you have a belief that intelligence or ability is something you're born with and you just can't change it, right? And if you think the cause for your success or failure is something you can't change, you're not going to put in any effort to try and do something about it. You'll be more likely to give up or avoid the experience or things like that. But if you have a growth mindset, it's the belief that a learner can change their intelligence through effort and practice. That's a really good thing. So even if you do hit a setback, you'll feel badly in the moment, but you'll be like, okay, let me change what I can change. And I can feel confident that I'll move forward and succeed next time. So the extent to which someone believes change is possible largely determines their ability to do so. Great question. We'll get to that at the end. So how do all of these things, how do these feelings, like what are the ingredients that kind of feed into this self-belief or this confidence? Again, many psychology researchers have thought about like, what are the ingredients? What are the sources of information that people use to build their sense of self-belief? Feelings or emotions is one of them, right? We just talked through that, how you feel like, oh, I feel really good, I did well, yes. Or, you know, how you interpret the setbacks. If you interpret it as a temporary, like, I should have done better, I'll do better next time, or a like, oh my goodness, this is just not for me, right? That influences your self-belief and your confidence moving forward. Past performance, right? Like, have you been successful in doing this in the past, right? Do you have something you can look over your shoulder to be like, well, I've done hard things before, so I can do this hard thing, right? This has the strongest influence on confidence. And this is why deliberate practice is so important. So they have that bank of experiences that they can look over their shoulder on and be like, I did that, I'm confident I can do this, right? If you don't have any direct experience to draw from, peer modeling is an important one that we can go to. Like, you can just watch other people like you succeed. And you're like, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. And then encouragement, persuasion, really this is giving feedback. And this is where you as an instructor are so important, right? The way you give feedback can really influence these self-beliefs and people's confidence. And so this is where using praise appropriately and really kind of focusing and encouraging like this growth mindset framing is really important and a good opportunity to use feedback as an instructor. Okay. So things to keep in mind. So a lot of that was just in a learner's head, but there are things that you can do as an instructor, primarily when you're delivering feedback that can really help these learners. So first of all, when you're giving feedback, highlight factors that students can change, right? Like, well, what did you do? What did you do last time? and be like, well, moving forward, what can you change to make that better? Really encourage effort and learning as a process, not innate ability. We don't want to do that, right? Be like, and then always be honest with your students in terms of their effort and level of attainment. If they didn't put in enough work, or if they didn't achieve, you're not doing them any favors by saying, oh, you did great. You be honest so they know how to change better for next time. Use praise when appropriate, right? Like not every time. If they didn't really, if they didn't do what they needed, they should have done, don't praise too much. But really reframe failures and the emotions that they experience around things they can control. So this might look like a coaching conversation you have with your learners, where you can say, hey, well, what happened? What happened in that test? How did you feel about it? Acknowledge those emotions. Ask them, is this something to do with you or something else? What's that reason? Are they attributing it to themselves or somewhere else? Can this reason be fixed? Is there something you can do about that reason? And then can you change this? And if so, how? So highlight factors and help make a plan with them, what they can change for next time. Okay, now when you get this all right, when you've got that good level of challenge, that good deliberate practice, you got learners kind of feeling good about their progress, all of this adds up together into what we call flow state. So flow is the enjoyment experience when a person's perceived skills, when their skills matches the challenge, right? I'm in that zone. I'm in that sweet spot. I'm got that 85%. I'm like, oh, this is kind of hard, but I want to do it. And I'm kind of just in it, So this is really when you get that sweet spot of the student's skill level, right? Their ability and how challenging the task is. And then we get that flow zone here. So, so if we think about like, what are the actual little steps through this? You're given a learning activity. You're like, okay, let's make it a little harder. Let's increase the challenge. Okay, it's a little harder. I might be getting a little anxious, but I'm getting better, right? You kind of go up the curve and then you're like, okay, yeah, I got this. And then it gets a little easier for you. And you're like, okay, I got this. I got this. And then you're like, okay, that's a little easy, and you cycle through. But if you can build up these little cycles for your learner, you can help them go up and up and up and be really feeling really good about it as they do it. So it's this feeling where people are so engaged in the activity that their self-consciousness disappears, like sense of time is lost. You engage in complex goal-directed activity, not for external rewards, but just simply for the enjoyment of doing. Little nerdy, I felt that way when I was putting this together for you all. I hope you all experience that in your own work, because it really makes life enjoyable. Okay, so so this really, when we can set that up well, this really becomes an energizing, positive feedback loop where you enjoy the challenge and the accomplishment of learning. And so your curiosity is sparked, you're like really focused and in flow, and you get that really energizing, rewarding, vibrant experience. Okay, 42. Great. Oh, importantly, you put in the effort that it takes, because it's not going to be easy, but you're having fun while you're doing it. Okay. All right. So another big part of building really effective learning experiences is we're supporting good learning behavior. You as an instructor can set up lessons that encourage your students in ways that will help them be confident, but there are things that they can do too, right? We want them to learn, to take control of their own learning. So good learners not only gain that content knowledge, those language skills, that speaking ability, but they also take charge of their learning and figure out how they learn best so they can go on and do it on their own. Importantly, they know what they know and they know what they don't know. So they know what to study and what they can just set aside because they already got it. And they know what they need to do to get there. So coming back to our kind of learning process here. You kind of study a thing, you do a thing, and then you kind of test and then what can you do, especially if you're a student on your own, where you don't have a teacher or an app, you're kind of on your own, and you need to like figure out that feedback for yourself. Did I succeed or did I fail, right? How can you as a learner yourself do that? And how can we support that for our students? So I'll go through this part kind of briefly, but what can students do to ensure they can build the seeds they need to succeed and then be confident so they can be confident in their abilities? Because what they do in terms of studying leads to failure again, they'll feel bad and they might just say, this isn't for me. But this is where good study strategies that help build accurate confidence are so important. And we'll go through just one of those right now. So there's a lot here, but generally this, from a learning science perspective, we call this monitoring. Cool word there, but basically monitoring is checking and reflecting on your learning to determine how well it's been learned. This is something good students do naturally, but not everyone does it. And as instructors, it's good to kind of support that. So, during a learning activity, learners should always be asking themselves, do I have it? Do I not? Do I need to try again? Do I need to study harder? Or, oh no, I've got this, I should move on to something more challenging. But always be checking and adjusting as they go. This matters for a couple reasons. First, learners tend to be overconfident. Not just learners, everyone tends to be overconfident. People tend to overestimate how much they know. They do this because they think back to when they did it last time and they're like, oh yeah, it was easy. Or, and they don't realize how much forgetting happens, right? People tend to underestimate how much you forget. Your memory traces tend to kind of fade a lot faster than you might think that they do. So you're like, oh yeah, I did my flashcards a week ago. I've got this. You probably don't. So learners tend to be overconfident. So it's good to check to make sure you're not overconfident. Learners, everyone tends to use poor study strategies where they'll just listen to the conversation, be like, yeah, I understood it, or reread their notes, or kind of practice the stuff they already feel comfortable with. When you don't challenge yourself during study, you have this feeling where, oh yeah, I got it. It was easy. I remember this feeling of it being easy, so I must know it. But if you pushed yourself harder, you would have this feeling of, oh no, that was hard. Yikes. And so you don't really test your own understanding. So people use poor study strategies. And also learners who are better at this are more effective and successful. So I will leave you in our last few minutes here with just one tip. There are many, many ways to help your students check and reflect. This could be, giving formative assessments, giving self checks, having them test themselves. There's many, many different ways to do this. But one strategy that is a really nice summary of a lot of the learning sciences literature on this that I think puts it together very simply and elegantly is this wait, generate, and validate method. This really helps your students develop accurate confidence in their skills and abilities, right? It's not just the listening, yeah, I got it. We want to fine tune, we want to tune their confidence so it's accurate, right? So wait, you learn a thing and then you wait because your memory traces kind of decay over time. So if you test yourself right away, of course, you're going to remember it. If you give yourself some time, see what you really know after a day or two, right? Then once you've waited, generate. Try to call that idea to mind. Try to come up with those vocabulary words. Try to have that conversation. test yourself, but really make yourself do it, right? So test it and then validate. Did you get it right? Were you successful? Yes or no? How easy or hard was that for you? And so if you kind of set up this routine with your learners to be like, learn a thing, wait, don't test yourself right away. You're going to know it. You got to let it wait. Then really generate, push yourself to actually recall the thing, do the thing, whatever, and then check to see if you got it right and be really honest with yourself about how you did and how easy and hard it was. And then think, what can I do better next time? That's a really useful way. That way you can kind of help the learner become their own instructor. So you don't have to stand there and do that for them. You're kind of helping coach those habits of mind so that they can learn on their own. Yes, this is all to do with metacognitive skills. I didn't put the word metacognitive on the slide because I thought it might be too nerdy, but yes, this is all about metacognitive awareness and metacognitive skill building. Monitoring is a piece of metacognitive awareness. I'm so glad that you guys are finding this helpful. Let's see, what time is it? Okay, let's bring it on home. All right, so putting it all together. How can we talked about a lot of different parts of learning and how this all adds up together. And so really, if we, confidence are positive feelings based on your self-belief that you will be successful, based on your accumulated prior experience built to performance with deliberate practice and your ability to learn and adjust. So when we think about how people feel, let's reframe those emotions, right? It's not you, it's what you did, focusing it on what you can change, that locus of control, supporting that through a good growth mindset, reasoning and thinking, and allow your students to experience success and feel that good positive feeling that comes along with it. When you're doing the doing and doing the thinking, deliberate practice, it's got to be effortful. You got to really challenge yourself, give good feedback when you do it. And again, those experiences of success build up that confidence where people can look over their shoulder and be like, yes, I did it. I know I can do it. And then make sure that confidence is accurate, right? By helping people become develop good learning skills on their own, right? To monitor their learning. Did you really get it? Are you accurately confident? And maybe you're better than you think you are, right? Like just really tuning that, that confidence accuracy, the weight, generate and validate, and help your learners gauge their own ability on their own so that they can come at the end of the day and be like, yes, I know it. Yes, I feel good about it. And I know it because I checked, right? All of these things I talked about this in terms of confidence today. All of these things really kind of fold up and create the core like learning experience that we really want to create for all learners, for all learning scenarios. So we think about this very intensely with all we do here at Pearson. I'm sure you do too. There's another piece of this I did not talk about today about creating, using a purposeful outcomes-focused design. When it comes to English language learning at Pearson, we do a lot of this by using our global scale of English. Tomorrow, Mike Mayer will be talking about many of these ideas that we talked about today in terms of growth mindset and emotions, but then showing how that specifically works here at Pearson with some of our English language learning experiences. So stay tuned to that. Mike is wonderful, so I'm sure you'll have fun. But thank you so much for coming and sharing some time today. It's so flattering that so many of you tuned in from around the world for this. I love thinking about how people learn and cognitive psychology, and I really appreciate being able to share some of that with you today. Now you know a little bit about what happens under the hood, and you can use that in your teaching expertise to inform some teaching moves that you make. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. We will share the recording will be available. And if you'd like a survey, like a certificate at the end, please complete that survey and we will send that off to you. But thank you so much. I've really appreciated being able to share some of this with you. Have a great day. I really appreciate all your time and joining in, and best of luck building confidence in your learners.